Morning, everybody. I'm Alan Masters. This is Chuck Williams, and this is the Sunday Conversation. Joining us today is a small group of people, and you around the world watching on the internet. Thank you for joining us. I hope that you got a chance to see the documentary, because I called it a movie, and I was corrected all the way from India. A person said, no, we made a documentary. That person is Sanjay Gupta, and he is not the Sanjay Gupta we know from CNN. There's a lot of Sanjay Guptas, evidently. But we have Sanjay Gupta, who helped us make a wonderful documentary called Finding God, and that'll be out soon. We do have a little bit of work to make sure that we get it out to the world properly. But we come here each Sunday to talk about life, the journey, and finding God. Foundation of Human Understanding is under a little bit of a metamorphosis. We want to create more content, and that's why Sanjay is going to be joining the team to help make more documentaries, you might say, whether they be 3 minutes long or an hour long. We're going to be doing a lot of this, and I think it's good. I think we can all learn a lot from it. Chuck Williams has been doing the talk when I couldn't be here, when my father couldn't be here, and I like the word conversation because that's what we got to do here last week, is have a conversation. And so this week we're adding a mic for the audience. Soon we'll be adding cameras. Soon we'll be adding a lot to make sure that you folks can get involved at home as well. And I thought today I want to talk about reacting and overreacting, because it's been in my life a lot lately, and I'm sure it's part of all of our lives, is learning how to properly react or not. So I'll just give you my scenario first, and then we can certainly have a conversation because it's Sunday. But I find that lately I've had a lot of things going on that have called me to react. Now, the animal side of me wants to have that fight or flight mode, which is to react and go, should I run, should I fight? And so what happens is my body releases this adrenaline, which is that fight or flight mode juice. And either I'm scared or I'm going to stand my ground. And I felt this flush through my body one day because something happened, and I went, what is that? What is that? What is that juice that has just been released inside of me? I felt like I took something, like, you know the old saying about it's like swallowing poison to kill your enemy. The problem is when you react, and when that release of adrenaline goes through your body because somebody says something nasty to you, insults you, pulls out in front of you, and you have to stop quick and go, you jerk! You know, that's all what's happening. That any of those reactions, you're releasing some sort of, I call it juice. And I just watched it. And lately I've become more of a watcher in my life than I ever have. I used to think, no, I'm going to react. I'm going to show that guy or person, or I'm going to stand my ground. And now I look at it and I go, I filter it. How's that? I filter it. I go, is what it about going to happen going to be good? Will something good come out of my reaction? And so I pause, and it's a flash of a light, you know, like the flash of a camera. All those thoughts, they happen that quick, and I just pause. And if I can't see that I'm about to say something that's going to make the situation better, remain calm while I'm doing it, and help myself and the other person in that moment, then I just need to shut the hell up. Because I have reacted my whole life, and I'm sure all you guys have too. I've reacted to everything, even though I've heard my father say, you're overreacting. How many times have you heard it? You're overreacting. And I'm like, well, I may be overreacting, but so what? Well, you know what? That so what? That juice that is flowing through our bones and our body is killing us because we are allowing it to. It's kind of a slow death. So what I've learned to do lately is just to pause, look at it, And then guess what? Something miraculous happens. The right answer comes from above. Because of myself, I can do nothing. And if I take the animal path, which is just to fight or flight, react to the juices flowing through my body, which makes my muscles stronger and bigger at that moment for just a moment, then I'm just reacting like an animal. I don't want to be like an animal. I want to reach for higher ground. So in that, I thought, well, today would be a good day to talk about reacting and overreacting. Because sometimes you have to react.
If someone's going to slug you, you got to put your hand up to stop them.
Sometimes you have to react. And that's why that is there. But if we aren't in control of our faculties, who is? What is? If we aren't steering the ship or the car, who and what is? So I thought today I would challenge people to, for the week, till next week, to look at your reactions for once and try to let some of those ugly reactions pass. Because all they do is pull you down. All they do is poison you. You're swallowing a poison pill, hoping it will kill your enemy. And it doesn't. It just eats us alive.
That's true. Did someone want to make a comment? Yeah.
In quantum physics, you can't tell what's going to happen. It's unknown. And if you watch what happens, it changes the result of what's happening. And it's like that's when we're at that point where we have to make a decision on fight or flight thing. If we don't react and wait for that instant, then something else comes in, and that divine, you don't even know what's happening. It just kind of unfolds for you. But if you use your strength, your juices to react, and you see which way you're going to go with that because you have it all figured out, it's not sometimes you're right in doing that. It's always wrong. It always takes you in the wrong direction and will cause you more pain and suffering if you follow that anger and use that for the motivation for your action.
I agree. I find that in my life, I have overreacted, and many times I can justify it. We have to watch those justifications, because if you justify doing something wrong that you know is wrong, it's usually to build up a part of you that is wrong, the ego, the pride, the will. And so I've gotten to this point in my life where my family I have a big family now. I mean, my father has great-grandchildren. And so as we are working through things in our life, it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and the family comes from all directions. And I've got one nephew that's into this Indian stuff from, the American Indians, and he's always trying to give me advice from the American Indian point of view. And I love the philosophy. There's some beautiful philosophy in the American Indian side of the world. And then, Sanjay is from India. So we have, the American Indian and then the Hindi Indian. And then, you have people that are Catholics, that everybody's bringing their opinions and their ideas, and each one of them offers something amazing and beautiful. But what happens is judgment. I've learned that while there's thousands and thousands of opinions on how to do one thing, you have to do what you know is right in your heart in that moment. And when people come and you have to make a decision, you're the one having to make a decision. You. But everybody comes and offers their opinions. And it's like, well, that makes sense. That's kind of logical. Yeah, I like that way of thinking. And all of a sudden, you forgot who you are and what you originally wanted to do. So what I do is I just listen and listen and listen, and then I just kind of step back. Thank you very much. And I wait a little bit. And guess what? That's when the answer comes. In the quiet, in the still, in the be still and know moments. Because there's just so many opinions in this world. So many opinions. And I find that when I'm by myself, in the stillness of where I want to try to be, usually the right answer comes to me. And I'm just so thankful for it. Because I want to do the right thing. right? Don't you want to do the right thing? And the problem is, a lot of us will go, well, Chuck told me I should do this. And now look what happened. It's his fault. They want to find blame. Nobody wants to take responsibility for actually making a decision and then, right or wrong, standing there and owning it. Because if you don't own your decisions for your life, if you look around and go, well, my husband did it, or my wife caused this, or my employees did this, or if I would have been there, I was busy over there and he caused me to be busy, so now that happened. We all look for excuses. It's the excuse my father used to say to me when I was a kid. It bugged me to death. Here's what he did to me, okay? I would say, an excuse. And he'd say, now you've done it. The excuse is more wrong than the thing you did.
That's Adam's problem.
Right? If Adam had owned it,
It would have been different.
the whole world would have been different. But it's just interesting how we all look for blame. We all look to make an excuse. And the excuse is compounding the wrong. Did you want to say something?
I know my worst enemy is me
Yeah.
and my habits and, my old ways stick and everything like that. I have a tendency to spread myself very thin and get too involved in different things. And I'm realizing as I get older, I realize that, you took on too much. You try to create your own world by doing this instead of waiting for God to show you what to do. And so it's just like all the things that you've done, if you take a value in learning some of the perspective of it, come back and they help you because you're wiser then.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've known Tim for a long time. I sold him a car 20 years ago or so.
Yeah, 25.
25 years ago. And for me, I've known a lot of you guys a long, long time. And it's really nice to see some of you and some of us growing up finally. Even just sitting there and talking and kind of, did you notice Chuck had a smile on his face the whole time he was outing himself? Mm-hmm. He's owning it.
Yeah.
He's like,
It's
I was a dummy.
I've been waiting 5 years to hear you just volunteer it.
Right.
It just comes out and there it is. Bingo. It's on the table.
We think that if we admit we're wrong, that we are condemned.
No, that's
We think that people are going to condemn us. We think that we have to condemn ourselves, that God is going to condemn us. First of all, we have a forgiving Lord. And if we didn't, we'd be dust and blown away. But he gives us our entire life to see what we need to see, to the last breath. And it's so interesting how we think we are going to be judged, and that is why we hold on to the pride. Don't want to be judged. Ego doesn't want to be outed. Really what you're doing is feeding and keeping that ego alive inside of yourself when you're holding on to it. I'll tell you what happened to me just the other day. Somebody didn't want somebody else to come to a party, and it's interesting because I said, well, gosh, I didn't know. I thought it was a party, and you invite your friends. And what happened was I just said, my apologies. That was it. I didn't try and make an excuse. It wasn't my party. But I thought, when you have a party, you invite your friends, and I got invited, and so I invited another friend. Anyway, it was a dinner party. A few people were going out, and how it worked out was they were like, oh, well, it is what it is. But because I reacted, instead of like, well, what kind of a jerk are you? Why not? What about a friend, and 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 what about this friend's a friend, and a friend? And I just said, my apologies. I could have overpowered them. I could have given them my reasoning. But what happened was that person then kind of felt bad and said, well, I guess, And that person that they didn't want to come ended up paying for the entire meal for everybody. Wow. Out of the blue. So you see how, had I reacted, it would have turned it wrong. It would have turned into an ugly mess, and it would have been a closed party and a closed group. But instead, it was like, oh, it's okay. And then the interesting thing is that somehow the grace fell into that person. I appreciate being here and all you people so much. Let me pay. It's just how it works. It's called the ripple effect. You don't even know. Another one. This is another interesting. Last night at my house, we have like a 65-inch TV mounted on the wall, and my grandson was over, crawling around, pulling every book I have out of my bookshelf, and every one of them is signed by the author, and each one is some famous person. I'm like, no! Oh, get that book! Oh, the cover! He's taking the cover! And I was like, finally, I just let it go. I go, give me those 3 books. I don't care about the rest. Pulling everything down. And he's just going from one side to the other. And above all this is this gigantic TV. And all of a sudden, now my son-in-law was the one that mounted the TV. All of a sudden, he kind of started going over, because he's only 8 months old, and he grabbed a cable that was going up to the TV up on the wall, and had my son-in-law cut corners and been cheap and not mounted that TV right, that TV could have fallen and killed his own son. So don't cut corners, because someday you may cut a corner that may cost you your own child, right? So I looked at him and I said, I'm amazed that TV didn't come off that wall, because that kid grabbed it's like he almost hit the ground before it finally pulled, so it jerked real hard, and it could have just popped it off. And I looked at him and I said, aren't you glad you put that up there really good? He says, yeah. So, as you go through your life, when you cut corners and you cheap the way out, it comes back, because you never know. You could make an excuse. Again, to the excuse. And you may go up to God and say, God, my son, he died because why? And the God would say, well, should have put more bolts in that thing, huh? You had them all. You had all the bolts. I made sure you had all the bolts when you were installing it. Anyway, go ahead.
Well, the other thing about making a mistake, you can kind of stew in that poor me kind of thing, or look at it and realize that you needed to make that mistake to learn this lesson. And if you tend to try and look at how did I get in this situation, and try and go back and think about how I can avoid this in the future, and to see what you learn from this. Even it was painful, but the painful lessons you remember.
I'll tell you what, it's interesting you say that, because I have a business outside of this, and I work with some gigantic companies. And day before yesterday, I had a client call me and say, hey, by the way, this year we're having a rough year. We're having to lay off some employees, so we're going to have to hold off a year, and we'll come back next year if you'll have us. And I'm like, so nothing? And they're like, no, we can't. We're laying off employees. And I'm in the part of the business where it's like, they can spend it or not. And this year it's not. It's $100,000. So I felt, this is why I'm talking about this today. I felt that flush of energy. I mean, somebody just sucks $100,000 out of your business, which in my business is a chunk of money for anybody. That's some people, that's more than they make in a year. For a lot of people, that's 2 or 3 times what they make in a year. And now my business is a pretty good sized business, so it's not the end of things. But it was still like, what? But I had to remain calm, because there was 3 people on the phone. They're listening with their eyes and their ears. They're listening. They could be sitting there with eyes closed. Let's see how this guy handles it. What's his character made out of? And I said, I was thinking to myself, my mind said to me, you be careful what comes out of your mouth right now. Because I've had this happen before. They could come back and I could say something that makes them never come back. And they said, well, we could work with you ad hoc if we get some budget loosened up. So I thought, I want to go, you can't do this to me. All those things went through my mind. And I just had to stay calm. I said, well, okay, so this is kind of a decision you guys had to make before you called me. So even though it's a shock to me, it's something that you already came to that conclusion. So nothing I'll say is going to change your mind. Okay, well, so be it. She says, well, if you'll have us back, we'll come back. I said, of course. And I said, all right, well, keep me posted when you need me. it was the hardest thing I'd done in a long, long time because I wanted to scream, yell, cry, run around naked, and you know, 'cause what are you going to do? It's a life changer. But then I hung up and I sat there and I was in my car on a Friday. So it's like, come on now, I have the whole weekend to think about this. I sat there in my car and I thought to myself, very interesting, very interesting. The whole feeling, the reaction, those juices. So I texted the person that had to tell me this, who I know. I texted her, I said, I'm sure that wasn't easy. Be strong. She texted me immediately back saying, thank you, Alan. She just told me a piece of horrible news for me, and I told her to be strong. Because that can't be easy. It's not. I've had to do it. Have you ever had to fire anybody? It's horrible. It's horrible. But the world works like this. So then I thought, well, this is obviously a fork in the road. It's a fork in the road. I have to do things differently. But now I have to be extra aware. I have to watch. Watch for something that is coming, because now the opportunity there's a vacuum that's been created. Something will fill that. I could fill it with alcohol. I could fill it with anger. I can fill it with all kinds of things, or I can really up my game, my consciousness, and let God fill it with what's supposed to be there. Then again, it could have been a test. It could have been a pressure test.
Right.
Because before great things happen, before you set out to sail in the ocean, you pressure test all your lines and make sure that you're not going to sink. You got to make sure that there's, everything's been tested. So I'm being tested. We're all being tested.
All the time.
That's right.
Yeah.
So the pressure test, I look at it as a good thing. It's like maybe something better's coming.
And like you said, the person who's telling you the bad news, they felt the pressure because now they had to tell somebody they've had a good relationship with and who's done a good job for them, well, we can't use you this year. Things don't look good at all for us. We can't just use you a little bit. We can't use you at all. Yeah. That's a big deal. So that they were under that pressure too, and they tried to be gracious about it. Some people, I'm sure, would set you up to make some mistake and say, well, we've just had it with you, when that was really what they wanted to begin with. But these people were noble about it. Yeah. So it's all a test. And in the end, what I've found in life is that in the end, it all balances out. And the people who give you the bad news or who somehow withdraw from their relationship with you go through things they need to go through. And your paths may cross again, and you're different people. Yeah. And it has a good resonance when they cross, or you never see them again, but you've grown and they've grown, or not, whatever. What I noticed is, more and more than I ever imagined, everything in our lives is orchestrated so that we can grow to see what we're here to see. Whatever that is. And you can take three people from three totally different cultures and different religious backgrounds and different philosophies, and they're still human beings with all our human nature and all our weaknesses and strengths, and they're actually going through, in their way, they're being brought by the power that runs this show to a place to realize what they need to realize while they're here. Mm-hmm. And that is, the more I see that that's the case, the more it creates a secret appreciation for the life that may deal you some hard lessons or some hard, at some point you're going to get hurt or sick, or a friend of yours is going to have crisis or whatever. This is going to happen. We know it. We see it in life. We always try to kind of keep it at arm's length, but it gets closer and closer. But the more you see these little beauties in the life, that this is all meant to lead us, every time you have an obstacle or a crisis, you wonder, what does this mean? But the wonder isn't a mental thing. It just is a curiosity almost. It's like, what does this mean? The little baby who pulled on the TV and could have caused serious damage to himself or to others didn't know it. And he didn't know how close he came at that, because he's just a baby yet. He doesn't understand. But we're standing back here and say, whoa, my goodness. That's, the more you live, the more you see about that. So that, I have friends who've lost, You have kids who are brilliant and capable and great, and they've lost them. In an instant, they're gone, but in the prime of their life. And it devastates them. And one friend of mine who's a big Christian, who's very fervent in his Christianity and wants to live it, he told me at some point, he says, I lost my faith because this was so tragic that my son was pulled from me, and he pulled from everything so quickly. And he said it was a real crisis for me, and he was still going through he knew it was foolish for him to do that, but it happened. How can you imagine? But what I'm seeing is, even though I haven't had that kind of loss, I'm seeing in little things, there is a reason for all of it.
Absolutely.
The good, bad, and the ugly.
It's interesting how you talked about human nature, right? And I thought, as you said that, something said human nature, animal nature, insect nature. Mm-hmm. You have all the way up to the higher nature. So if you have an animal nature, because that's that fight or flight mode, that is kind of, we have that in common with animals, right? Animals don't have human nature, but we have a little bit of animal nature. Mm-hmm. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, and we actually feel guilty for giving into our animal nature, whereas animals, you don't see guilt.
Yeah.
You don't see guilt in
Sometimes
animals. If you're around them very much at all, people, they have a dog and they think they understand animals. But if you're around a lot of animals, you'll see even the dog that you think is guilty and sorry and he really loves you, you're just projecting all that because he's just a dog.
It's interesting you talk about that because our dog, we have a Maltipoo little funny thing that my mother-in-law bought. And it's a cute little thing, and it's really intelligent because it's part poodles and they're very smart dogs. And it's really a smart little dog. But the other day it ran out and it chased a jogger and it twisted its hip a little bit and, I don't know, tore its ACLU or whatever it is.
That's ACL.
And now it's like it's walking on three legs and the other one is just kind of there, the back leg. And I got up the other morning and I went, my back, I got to get to the bathroom. Complaining all the way, first thing in the morning. And that little doggy got up with that little leg that's kind of hanging there. Didn't make a squeak.
He suggested.
It's like animals don't complain. We had a cat one time. I remember my dad. Cat ate a piece of fish, and in the fish was a fishing hook because we had gone fishing. It was the bait, and got the hook right through its mouth, and it was barbed, and it was like we heard it out there, and it's like, oh my gosh! So we cut the line, and we had a little cage. We put it in a cage. And it would just sat there and meowed and had a big old hook through its lip. And, a cat has a very strong mouth, the skin. And my dad tried to get that hook out of that cat's mouth. And the cat's like, and my dad said, we'll put it in the cage. We'll take it to the vet. But while we were waiting to go to the vet, the cat just sat there. Just like nothing. Just sat there looking around. Just like nothing. And I thought, we are such miserable complainers, whining baby, spoiled, rotten brats we are. Just amazing. The little dog, imagine if you tore your ACLW, whatever the heck that is. I don't even know what it is, but, it was the hip or whatever. We would be going, don't touch, get me some painkillers, hurry. It's like the nonstop. If somebody is hurt, but I've watched my dad suffering for, 25 years. Mm-hmm. Since he swam in some polluted water and got eaten alive by amoebas, and that caused the next problem, the next. He pretty much doesn't complain. Mm-hmm. We don't know if he's in pain or not. He says, I'm in terrible pain. It's like, really? I'd be going, get it quick. But he's just, I'm in terrible pain.
One of the differences is that because we're human beings, we have a nature that feels guilty for things we do, that animals just do it, and they maybe it's a mistake, but they just do it, and they don't have a guilt thing. They may not do it again because they got beat up, but they don't do it because they're guilty. We have a guilt thing going on, and we have a judgment thing going on. Animals don't judge. If you have two big bucks and one wants to run the herd, they fight it out. And one wins and the other loses and runs away to another herd to see if he can beat that buck. So that they don't have these two elements in them, which is guilt and judgment. Judgment is a way to make you get above whatever's oppressing you and to dominate it.
Justify why you've done what
And
you've
instead
done.
of just fighting it out and saying, oh, you're better than me, or I beat you,
Well,
and they say, okay. and
That's
then
the
just
only
go
way
on.
they can is to use their brute strength, where we're supposed to use what we talked about, not the animal nature, not the human nature, the higher nature. And the higher nature allows for God to intervene. That's the beauty of that higher nature.
Well, what you see with this nature, because we're talking about this animal level that we're on, because you talk to a psychologist or a psychiatrist and they'll talk about trauma. And they'll say, well, we have trauma, and we have the obvious ones who are traumatized, who've had terrible experiences, and now they can't. Any trigger that brings that memory. See, I heard this the other day on a guy was talking, I don't know what his authority was, but he sounded very authoritative. He was on BBC, so he must have been smart.
British, yeah.
And he says, well, we have memories that are connected to traumatic experiences. And when we recall the memories, we react in the moment emotionally to them. Well, the memories are just memories.
Right.
But even the memories somehow trigger an emotional reaction in the moment. So there's no threat in front of us to react to, and we're reacting to the memory.
And guess what's happening? Every reaction releases the poison again, the fight or flight mode, or whatever it is. And I don't want to get into the science of it, but I get it. Every one of those, and it's like doping us. We're like
Well, it dopes you
poisoning.
so much that you're addicted to creating the condition that brings up the trauma. So now you can react, even though it's killing you. It's like the drug addict. At some point, it was really giving him a high, and then at some point, he sees it's killing him, and yet he keeps getting the drug.
Yeah.
We
Addicted.
recreate our trauma conditions in our life, and it's like somebody lives in Southern California, and they've got all their parents' furniture in their house, and they say, we're going to move, we're going to change everything, we're going to move to Oregon. So they sell all their furniture, and they move up to Oregon, and they have all new friends, and all new house, and you come and visit them in 5 years, and it's different furniture, and they have different friends, but they're just like they were in Southern California. So they've changed their place and their environment and everything around it, but they've recreated it somehow with new people and new everything. And you wonder, why is that? Because they went to run away from it, and they brought it with them. That's the memory you bring from your childhood, and that begins to percolate in you, and now we become addicted to recreating the very condition we're scared of. But we're addicted to it. The secret, in my mind, once you realize, yeah, that's happening to me, the secret is to wonder and watch, like you said, to watch and wonder, because you see this reproduced. For instance, say you're a person with, I used to be somebody with a very strong trigger action temper, and you do something wrong to me, and I had learned that even if the person's bigger, if I hit him first, I'm going to win.
You learned that from my dad.
No, this is before I met your dad, and I was a stupid little, 7th grader, and it only took me 2 years to learn this, that this doesn't work. But, so I had that
2 years
power.
and 9 fights.
Yeah, I mean, I was picking big guys. You know what turned me? A guy did something to me, just said something out of line, because I would hang with the tough guys, and I just was into him. And he was trying to defend himself, but he was innocent. And I saw the innocence in his eyes, and I saw the meanness in my anger, and I realized, I can't live this way.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting?
It is.
It's not like I got beat up and then I quit. No, I just saw I couldn't. So I slowly tried to get control of the anger and push it down and and live a different way. And then, 3 years later, I'm the most congenial guy you want to meet. You can't get me mad about anything. I'm out there friendly and all this stuff. And I began to see the problem with that. That then the anger that was coming out of me before, still there, it just gets shoved down.
It's interesting, when we're young and ignorant, and we don't know any better, and we live inside that animal part of us. As little children, they don't know better, so they do everything, and then the parents correct them over and over again and bring them back to where they should be. And after a while, they kind of recognize, and they grow and they understand. And that's where the blend between animal nature and human nature. And then human nature kicks in and you start to feel all those human things, lust and anger and hunger of, the world. And that's where we start looking for the blending to blend into the higher nature, where we start to understand our lower nature, our animal self, our human self. But if we don't ever, make that kind of leap of faith, which is into the realm of understanding higher nature, knowing of yourself you can do nothing, and saying, God, I don't know. Please show me, I'll wait. And let go of the anger, let go of the temptation, let go of the lust, whatever it is, you let go of it. Just say, Then what happens is all of a sudden something happens. It's like right as you let go and you're like, well, this could take a while, and all of a sudden, boink, something happens. You actually forget that it didn't really take that long. The devil on this shoulder says, you're never going to get it. It'll never happen. And then you believe that. It's the same with trauma. Your mind keeps playing those things over and over again, and you keep releasing the adrenaline or the poisons in yourself as the reaction happens over and over and over. And finally you want to escape that reaction, that Groundhog Day over and over again, and poof, and that's the end of that. Can't get rid of it. But that's what the meditation is about.
And part of what the meditation is meant to show you is you take a little quiet moment in your life, a few minutes you take aside to get straight, sort of thing, to be in the right centered or whatever. People have all these words they use.
Be still and know.
Whatever
That's the other thing.
they say, I'm going to take a little time each day and go there. So you take this time, you set it aside, you do what you do. In this case, use Roy's meditation, but some people they have their own ways of doing this quiet time. And what I discovered in my quiet times was that I was under the control of a whole nature that had me, that my mind could just take me away.
Yeah.
And the only thing that I realized at some point, oh my God, I've been thinking for 7 minutes, I've been thinking about what Joe did to me yesterday, or thinking about how to cook this recipe, or just silly little things.
Lost in thought.
And you find yourself, and you all of a sudden realize it, and then you get back to your center, sort of thing, and then before you know it, And I thought for a while, because this is what meditation was for me, essentially, was seeing that I couldn't stop myself being taken away by my thoughts. And I thought, I just don't know how to do this right. I am not doing this right. Looking back on that now, I realize I had it. That's the point. You see you're caught up in something. You see the emotion rising up. You want to disable that emotion. You know that it's going to be destructive. You know that you don't see the whole picture. You know all this stuff. And so you try to modify it a little bit. You just step back a second to be separated from this natural reaction that's going to kick in. And then things begin to unfold. What God wants to show you, I hate to use the big G word.
It's all right.
What He wants to show you is that you can't step back completely out of this nature unless He does it to you. And He does it to you when and where and how long He wants. So what I noticed is He just gives you a little bing, and you're aware you're in the moment. You're not in the moment. You're aware you're caught. Where does the bing come from if you're caught? Where does that? It didn't come from your mind, because your mind you were into this thing. It was like a dream almost. You were right, and all of a sudden, bing. And it just comes. It doesn't come when you decide to have it. It may come when you're perfectly awake and dealing with life. And bing, you come back and say, geez, that was different. I mean, I was there, but I was just slightly disconnected, and I got to see this. That what he is trying to do is bring your nature to a place where it welcomes that separation in the moment instead of resists it or pushes it aside or justifies whatever. There's all the ways we do. There's got to be something in you that welcomes that little moment of realization because it's putting you down. It's a put down for your proud nature. Your judgmental nature is getting put down by. That's a big deal. You wouldn't think he would be so gentle. But he is very gentle sometimes.
You know, it's interesting throughout that little conversation right there, and it's kind of a state of where we are in this world. He said, I didn't mean to say, the G word, because so many people are so sensitized to God, Jesus, the Lord, that it's really sad, isn't it, that we actually kind of are careful. We point up, we talk about Him.
Well, I'm trying not to activate their traumas.
I know.
Because someone who's raised in a God family, 4 kids are raised in a God family, 3 of them love God all the time, and the 4th one can't stand the Word of God.
That's right.
And that's probably the most aware person, very likely, because the others are all under the hypnotism of the generation before, because a true parent who believes in God is not going to push it down your throat. Yeah. It's like the prodigal son. He ran off and did all his craziness, but he was the one that the father appreciated him more than the son who stayed there and did everything he was supposed to do. Yeah. That's an unusual father.
Because he admitted he was wrong.
Right.
Not only that, but
she said because he admitted he was wrong. She didn't have a microphone.
Oh, yeah. She said because he admitted he was wrong, which is right.
Sorry.
But it's that, but it's that there's something else about that story that's puzzling because it does not fit. That story does not fit in the Christian, Judeo, even Muslim doctrine of being good. Because all these religions tell you to be good. Here's the son who wasn't good at all.
The beautiful thing about that whole, what you just said, is that it shows that, yes, of course, your Father in heaven wants you to be prudent in all things that you do and be wise in all things that you do. But guess what? Since He does not judge you, and since He is a forgiving Creator, even when you make a mistake and you have your transgressions, as long as you wake up and see, because we have a jealous God, He wants it to be your choice, not just because you are told to do it.
No, He's not a jealous God, though. People, here's what we do. We personify God. That's
Jealous,
all we can
jealous
do.
is a word that we have.
I know.
And I know it doesn't really fit because jealousy is really not a good thing anyway,
here's
but that's what it
tricker.
says.
The tricky thing is, the father loved the prodigal son more. But the loyal son says, but wait, Dad, I did everything. I didn't do all the crazy stuff he did. I didn't cause all the chaos and drug addiction and everything. I was honorable. How can you love him more? Why would they tell a story where he loves him more? Oh, you should love him the same, not more.
There's another parallel story about the lamb that wanders off from the herd. And Christ says, I love you more than all the rest. And what I think it was with the prodigal son was he wanted to venture out. He wanted to see things for himself. The other sons wanted the security of being around their family because that was what all they thought they would have. And that was their form of being good. But this kid just wanted to see for himself, and he found out.
And another parallel story is the guy that gave money to, 3 different people. I can't remember.
Oh, yeah, I remember.
And one buried it to make sure it was safe.
Yeah.
And one squandered it, right? I guess is what it was.
The one doubled it and the other one quadrupled it.
Right. So the point
nobody
is
did a wrong thing.
Yeah.
But
It's interesting how I think that's why, with all these stories, it tells us one thing, that first of all, that no matter what you do in your life, the moment that you wake up, and just like the guy on the cross next to Jesus, he says he doesn't belong to be here. Mm-hmm. We belong to be here. He does not. And Jesus said to him, you're going to be with me in paradise.
the first one.
The moment that he saw his wrong, Right, and that right,
Yeah.
you're right.
Yeah,
That's right.
And he says, "You will be with me in paradise today." The implication from the Christian teachings was he was the first one in this new state that Jesus had
yeah,
released.
and
on
whatever
earth.
he was, a murderer
Whatever.
or a thief or
Yeah.
whatever he was.
And he was a criminal.
Yeah. So see, I feel a whole lot better now.
But all
You can wait till the last
all
minute.
he did was speak up and say, "I deserve what I'm getting."
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, he couldn't do that if he was mad as hell at his persecutors
Yeah.
and felt righteous like most criminals. He said, "No, I deserve this, but I can see this man doesn't." It's like me and the kid. I was beating up the kid that I got the jump on, and I saw his innocence. I had that happen to me again, but it was a different situation. I was in the Army, and we were doing pugil's training. So they give you a stick with little cushions on either end, and you have some kind of a little leather helmet that's not any good, and you're put in the ring with some other guy, and it's who's going to stand up and win. So I end up against this guy who's 15 years older than me. I'm 19, and he may not be that, but 10 years anyway, and he was the sweetest kind of guy you want to meet, and he was slow moving and slow talking.
Didn't have a mean
but
bone in
just
his body.
neat guy, and he was my opponent. And I said, "All right, go after him, Williams." And so I go in there and I boom, self-preservation, and I won because he's not fast and I was faster than him. And I felt so bad about that I beat him. He wasn't bad. "Oh, thanks, that was fun. Yeah, I'd like to do that again." Like what's that guy? The series they did, Gomer Pyle. It's kind of like that, but he's a sweet-natured guy. And I always felt bad because I was in the Army, and when I was in the Army in basic training, they always try to get your energy going. And for the most part, they never got my energy going.
She says juice.
Juice.
Juice
But
flowing.
I went going with this guy, and he was another innocent guy. And I found that preservation thing, which, because I didn't have anything against him, was going against an innocent person. And I said, this is not good. There's something wrong. But I didn't know what to do about it. I just saw it, and to this day, I remember how I won, and everybody said, "Great, you did a great job, you got him." And I'm thinking, geez, this isn't great. Yeah. There's something in me that just realizes that. That's what we need to be in life to experience these things and see that even though we're gracious and good and honorable and follow the rules and try not to cause trouble, in certain instances, this meanness that's in you will be pulled on and brought out, and if you're lucky, it will be against an innocent person. And you can look at that because of their innocence and see, where did this come from? Where was that? What is this? And just question it.
And I want to bring it back to that thing we talked about, God, the Lord Jesus, the reaction that we all have. Because this morning I was like, well, we're a church. Should we start out like a church? Should we say a prayer? Should we start out saying, thank you, Jesus, for this opportunity to bring these people together? And because the mind is, all the way here, the mind was going. And even in the middle of the night, I woke up because I care. So if I care, a part of me, my subconscious, is looking for solutions. I'm an entrepreneur. I want to solve problems. I want to find solutions. If you care, there's a part of you somehow that offers up ideas, thoughts. It's interesting, isn't it? You wonder where all those thoughts come from. Some of them come from the dark side. Some of them come from the light side. Some of them are just the universe, just your body being a magnet for thoughts. I don't know. I don't honestly know. But I remember saying, something about Jesus, and I went, why is it so many of us have a reaction to the name Jesus? Why is it so many of us have a reaction to God? Is it us, or is it the dark nature that is dwelling in us that doesn't like it? Hence the reason why you see my dad walk around with the cross, hold it to people, and that reaction happens, a release, right? Same tiny little reaction in us that makes us repel. Is that the right word?
Yeah, push back.
Push back
Yeah,
from. It's like, why are we pushing back? Jesus was the Son of God, and
It isn't against Jesus. It's against the people that
I think it could be both. It could be judgment of those who are the fakies, judgment of those. But again, you got judgment. Let it go. So last night, some kids knocked on the door. They were Mormons. And they knocked on the door, and my daughter had just gotten there. And a friend of mine in Utah who's a Mormon sent them to me. And I was like, so the doorbell rings. It was like 8 o'clock at night. And there's these two nice-looking boys. They were probably maybe 20. Suit and tie, carrying their Bible, I guess the Mormon Bible. And I looked out the window and I went, oh, who's this? Opened the door and they said, hi, we're from Latter-day Saints. Just wanted to stop by. I said, well, my family just got here with my grandson. I've been looking forward to that. So maybe tonight's not a good idea. And they go, your friend Randy sent us. No, I said, well, isn't that nice? I said, I love that guy. I have a couple of Mormon friends that are just fantastic human beings. And it's not whether they're Mormon, Christian, Hindi, Jewish, Muslim. I have some Muslim friends. I have a couple of gay friends that I just love these guys. And I know that they're lost right now. But their spirit is the same Gomer Pyle spirit that is just sweet.
Or
they're just lost. They just don't know better.
They're prodigal son on his journey, but there's something about them that is looking, is wondering.
I don't care where you come from. I don't care what you believe right now. I am an inclusionist. I want to know more about you. I want to hear what you have to say to me, because guess what? You can hear the truth from a dog barking. Maybe it makes you understand something. You can hear the truth from anybody. The truth can come, but then they may try and twist in with their other stuff. That's when, if you're aware, you'll be able to separate the other stuff from the truth that you need in that moment. Yes, let her have the microphone. But I was thankful for them, and I was thankful that my friend cared enough about me, thinking that I'm going through a hard time, because I told him about this client. He said, I'm going to send those guys over to pray with Alan. That's what he knows, though, right? That's what he knows. To him, he was sending me some love from his heart.
Right.
And I appreciated that. I mean, it's a beautiful thing. I don't care where it comes from. He could have sent me a pumpkin pie. I would have been happier. But,
So to answer your question about starting out, how do we start out this session or a session? To me, what I noticed with your dad, and of course it's in that little clip about the movie, the documentary, that Sanjay was so clever in putting in that, which is at the end.
I don't worship, I live it!
I live it! So that if you come into a group of people who are struggling to live it, in the sense that we're going through whatever struggle is put in front of us. It may not be a struggle, it may be smoother, but we're living that, and the energy is in us, and we all have this little spark in our eye because we're trying to figure out, how do I get out of this craziness that I grew up in? That is the energy that has, and what we want to do is we want to reach out to the world, and the people who watch a little 5-minute intro or something, they need to somehow see in the energy that's going on, they need to see that spark, and the spark in them sees a spark in you, and they hold up and watch a little bit. That's the trick, because it's not a formal there's nothing wrong with religion if it just stayed in its own place, but religion is run by men and women who tend to want to dominate you with what they have. And they want to make their good your good, and they take away your individuality. We want to say to all those people, come in and listen a little more. We're searching just like you are, and you're from a different culture and a different background, but we think we're looking in the same ways that you're looking. And the ones who say, what the heck is he talking about? That's okay, because they're not ready yet.
Well, and that's why this is called Sunday Conversation, and this lady has something to ask.
Yes.
What I wanted to say to you when you're saying people react to the word God, I think it's common to blame God. Why did you put... I was in an extremely harsh family, and it's been really hard to recover from that.
You think you were in a harsh family.
But and I blamed God. You know, why did you put me in that family? Because I didn't pick that family. You know, and over
But
time.
now you've picked your friends. See, you can't pick your family, but you can pick your friends who you want to be around. And guess what? You are kind of the collective soul of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So you better pick your friends carefully. Otherwise, you'll pick friends that'll take you to hell instead of help you to find heaven.
Well, anyways, along the way, I have realized my fault and my unwillingness to accept what I did wrong. And I blamed my folks a lot. And it broke down. It's been breaking down and breaking down and breaking down. And so it's still difficult.
Are your parents still alive?
One of them is.
It's interesting as my father and mother age. My dad's going to be 91 in April. My mom's 88. And I'm starting to see the cracks in the wall. I start to understand, but not because they weren't always there, but I just couldn't see them because I didn't understand the reactions of my mother toward my father, the reactions of my father toward my mother, or the way my dad dealt with my mom, or the way my mom would rebel against my dad. And, you know, I mean, all those things. I was a kid. How am I supposed to know and understand what these adults are going to until I'm an adult and I have a chance to do the exact same thing? And I either choose to do things differently and break the chain and be the strongest link instead of the weakest link. Actually, I kind of want to be the weakest link and have that chain break and start a new chain so that my children can also not make the mistakes that my parents made. Like, I looked at my parents when my dad used to say, I only knew my wife 2 weeks before I married her. I waited 5 years to get married and never had sex before I got married because I thought, no way am I going to make the mistake my dad made. Even though he needed to make that mistake, I thought, no, I'm going to take the road less traveled. He made the mistake. He was a young man. He didn't know better. He didn't have a dad like mine. Didn't have a dad past 14. I had my dad to shine the light on the road. So I looked at my path and I thought, I'm going to do it differently. Now I got married. Had the same kind of hell everybody else has in their marriage, but had to look at it and deal with it in that moment, either wrong or knowing that I didn't want to do the wrong thing. I wanted to do the right thing. And I still didn't do the right thing. I just did it a little better. So I want my kids to do it better again. And hopefully my children can evolve through the years and the centuries to where maybe we have a better life. My children have a better life than I had, that I had a better life than my dad had, that he had a better life than his father before him, and Chuck's family. Since I hit you. I didn't mean to hit you.
I had a funny experience because I know so many people that have had terrible childhoods. I didn't.
I didn't either. I had
I had parents who wanted to be honorable, and they were actually, my parents were both running from the heritage of their families because they saw them as oppressive. So they brought their family 1,000 miles away and tries to raise them in a neighborhood where they could be good to their kids and give them. And if someone abused us at school or something, they were there.
Oh yeah.
They didn't fool
My
around.
dad was, yeah, absolutely.
And I had a different environment, but I still had things to learn about life. I still was this guy picking fights in the 7th grade and doing all the crazy things I've done in my life that aren't just crazy, they aren't bizarre. You know, I wasn't a drug addict, I wasn't an alcoholic, I wasn't a sex maniac, I wasn't any of these things, but I still had to learn, and they were tough lessons for me to learn about life and what makes life
you were making choices each day. You could have been a drug addict, you could have been a sex addict, but each along the way, you probably, your measuring stick was your parents and the love that they had for you.
I ended up doing everything they didn't want me to do. They wanted me to go to school, get a degree, have a good education. Every time I was supposedly achieving a good salary and good thing, I picked up and went somewhere else. Started over again. But my life, I didn't see it at the time, but my life, I kept wondering, I'm wasting my youth. Because I was a professional cabinet maker. I was working with some of the best companies in LA. I should go on and do that. And then I walked away from it. What I'm saying is my life was not my life.
Yeah.
It was my life in that I was living it, but it was being orchestrated. But I was somehow, instead of doing what I thought I was going to do, I ended up doing this. And then I thought I was going to go here, and then I ended up going over here. Instantly.
In an instant, when you reacted to some mean kid at school, that thing got in, and it starts steering you from the inside, and you're like, don't know why you're going
Knowing
this way.
that you're not this person you are, there's a secret knowing inside of you beyond your brain that knows this is not me. And it doesn't even come out in words. Go on.
I mean, when you said it, it just struck me that I am not what they wanted me to be. I mean, they tried so hard. And they couldn't
And
help
you tried
themselves.
hard not to be what they wanted you to
Yes, and I ended up being what they wanted me to be, still
And-
not realizing
you
that
still
that's
didn't
not who
realize
I
that's not
really
me.
was.
It's interesting, because my dad didn't want me to be anything. He just said, do what you love to do, but do a good job at it. Make sure that you are thoughtful about whatever it is you do, whether it's working on cars or building cabinets. We are so asleep that if we don't learn how to put our love and our heart and our soul into things that we do, no matter what it is, being thoughtful. When you're cleaning the kitchen, you go to somebody's house and you're like, hey, let me help you clean up before I go. You leave a little bit of your love behind, and the person goes, wasn't that nice? So-and-so didn't just say, hey, thanks a lot, and leave, and they helped us clean up. I mean, it's a silly example, but as small as the little things you do. Last night I was watching the Undercover Boss show, and it's interesting how they pull out the people that are cutting corners, and they're like, that disturbs me. That guy's cutting corners because he's being paid by how much time he should do it in. It pays 30 minutes to do it. He's not going to spend 45 minutes doing it, even if the car really needed it. It was a car place. And so he says, you only have 30 minutes. So he stuck to that. He would cut corners. Then there was the other guy that worked a little bit harder, a little bit faster, put his love into it, and it showed. So in the end, the owner of the company said, you got to change the way you do things. And you, sir, the one that do things right, I'm going to give you $20,000. I want to give you a scholarship for your children to go to school. I want to do this, that, and that. So there is always, in life, there is some sort of value received for that love that you put into what you do. And it may come from him, and it may come from him, her, but it comes. And the only thing you get by cutting corners in life and by thinking nobody saw that is you go to hell a little bit faster in a handbasket.
I'd like to add something to that. It's like your dad said, whatever you do, do the best job you can. And I found that on doing a job like that, you don't see people watching you, but they do. And they do see that. And you end up getting the benefits for that. If there's a promotion involved or something, they know that and they see that. You never see it. It's always a surprise to you when you're given, some kind of recognition for that.
And it isn't even about the recognition, but I get what you're saying. It's truly about your own soul. It's about giving going the extra mile, giving the extra little bit, and God replaces it inside of you. In other words, if you give of yourself, then God gives you more. And you don't even know how he's given you more, but it's coming. And you see it in your life where, well, that guy, somebody said to me the other day, you have, a beautiful family and you're happy and you have this great life that you get to do all these things and you have cars and a nice house, and they spelled it all out. And I went, wow, I thought everybody had all that. I thought everybody works hard in their life to have those things. And I know I work hard. I put my life in it. I don't want to put too much of my life into what I do, because that's the other side of the coin, is you give all of yourself and forget about your responsibility to your children and your wife and your kids and your parents. So it's like life is a constant finding the middle ground of, doing too much for people, being a people pleaser, and not doing enough and being a selfish individual. But I thought to myself, I am so blessed in so many ways. You too can be blessed in so many ways. All you have to do is reach for higher ground. Reach to be in that, not animal nature, not even human nature, but a higher nature. We're stuck in this human nature until we're released from it to go into the higher nature where I think our Lord lives. And that's where we can hear him more. As we get closer, we can hear the message, we can hear him speak into our heart and soul, and our whole lives change and everything we do, and the ripple effect goes out into the world. So you can either live a selfish life, get a extra big bag of Doritos today on Super Bowl Sunday, and sit there by yourself and pig out, or maybe there's some things you need to do, and we have these things called DVR. I don't have to watch it live. I don't even care about it. I watch people. They are building their lives around today. Super Bowl Sunday, I'm like, I can't wait to start my tractor. And so even, this morning, I woke up at 4. I'm like, why am I awake? And then I'm like, what should I talk about? And it's like every time. I don't know. My dad has always said, you've heard him a million times, don't prepare. I'm like, okay, stop it. All these... all this stuff, it's like, don't you all have thoughts that are endless? Endless. Just watch them. They're almost like cartoons. After a while, they become cartoons, and you see all these things going on. You're like, oh, so silly. Well, I think, today has been a good day. I think that if we just come a little closer to understanding the difference between the animal nature, the human nature, and the higher nature. Spiritual nature. The fact that you are conscious of it and recognize that when these things happen, you have a choice to either react like the animal or say, no, I choose a higher nature. I choose the path that God wants for me. And of yourself, you can do nothing, and just say quietly to yourself, Lord, show me what I should do. And typically, in that quiet, in that stillness of your own mind, the answer will come or it won't. And then you move on with your day. And it comes later. So what does it say? Be still and know. And my dad's meditation is awesome. And a lot of us forget that are here doing what we do in our lives, living together for the last 30, 40, 50 years. It's really an important tool. Go out into the world, be a little more conscious, be a little more thoughtful, a little more loving, a little more higher nature.
You can hold back on the loving part. People don't know what love is. That's another discussion, but
then
this whole thing about loving their dog and loving their kid and loving their
That'll be our next
Doritos.
conversation. Mark it down. What is love? We're going to have to do that next time. I'm Alan Masters. He's Chuck Williams. Thank you guys for watching, and we really, truly do need your donations to help keep this going and to make some more documentaries and bring Sanjay over from India. He's going to be here at the end of this month, and we'll start working on that. So thank you again for being here on our Sunday Conversation. Thank you, guys.